Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. Something got me thinking recently. Leeds United, we've just gone back up to the Premier League, but there's a lot of talk of how the squad is really lacking and that we need to sign a lot of quality players to give ourselves a really good chance of staying up. So it got me thinking, is the squad as bad as it may appear? So it got me wondering, how much Premier League experience does the current squad actually have? So I looked into it, and these were the results. So I'll just quickly go through them all, and I'll give my opinion as to where things are at with this particular group. So the following are the only players in the squad who have played in the Premier League before. Not necessarily with Leeds, most of them have, but one or two have played in the Premier League, just not with Leeds United. But in terms of just raw Premier League experience, all of these have played in the Premier League before. So, I'll start at the top, and I'll work my way down. To apologise, got some grit in my eyes. Oh, these little things always happen when I do a video. Or a live stream for that matter. I do apologise. So, as it happens, Leeds' squad is not actually as threadbare as I thought in terms of Premier League experience. There's some players that have quite a few games actually, surprisingly. Some more than others, as we'll go through now. So, starting at the top, not necessarily the most popular player that we currently have at the moment, but it's Jack Harrison. He has come back to the squad, having spent some time out on loan. His mum came out with a very silly comment, and she probably shouldn't have said it. However, regardless of how poor Harrison's loan spells have been away from Leeds United, he has still clocked up 170 appearances in the Premier League. This can't be sniffed at. We've lost Solomon because he wasn't ours anyway, so we need a replacement winger. Now, if Jack Harrison could find the form that he had when he was at Leeds previously, he would, at his best, he was getting around 8 goals for the season and some assists on top of that as well. Now, if we could get Harrison at that kind of form, maybe he even bags an extra couple. Maybe he gets 10 goals for the season and maybe another 5 assists or something like that, or maybe even pushing 10 assists. I think there's still a player there. If we're talking purely on footballing ability alone, I think there's a decent player there, and that amount of experience, as I say, can't be sniffed at. Leeds have got a ready-made player in Jack Harrison with 170 appearances in the Premier League, which is by far the most of any player in the current Leeds squad. So unless the attitude problem in terms of him saying that he would never return to Leeds and his mum saying he'll never play for Leeds again and all this rubbish, if all of that can be brushed under the carpet by Jack putting in a lot of hard work, pre-season. Maybe he can do an Aronson and a Nonto, where he works really hard and actually gets himself back into the Leeds fans' good books. I think he could, and as I say, if we can get him back to the kind of form that he was at his best at, then it's a player worth having, and it means then that we don't have to go spending another 20 million on another player. Then again, if we do sell him in this particular window, then it would be a decent return for PSR, I would imagine. But is Jack Harrison's stock all that high after having a couple of poor loan spells? That remains to be seen. Moving on to another player who's not necessarily the most popular. Ilamilier. He's another in the 100 club with 107 Premier League appearances. And, that can't be sniffed at. He is still a little error prone and needs to have those errors coached out of him. But as we know, he's a very good shot stopper, and he will face a lot of shots. So maybe this isn't a bad thing. So if Meslier is to stay, and if he is to be the number one goalkeeper this season, he needs to get his errors cut out. But having played over 100 games in the Premier League, it can only be a good thing for him and for the team. Let's go on to a more popular player now, Dan James. Dan has been in scintillating form for the last 2 seasons in the Championship. He now just needs to bring that kind of form into the Premier League. But in his career to date, he currently has 106 appearances in the Premier League. And you can't teach pace, and he's still got that pace. If he could use that pace to real effect and get himself some goals and assists in the Premier League, then that'd do for me. So I think it's imperative we keep Dan James. I think he has been offered a new contract, so he'll have deserved it based on his last 2 seasons. He's just become more clinical, more prolific, more accurate, without sacrificing the pace or anything like that. He still works really hard throughout the match, and he's he's the threat that everyone wanted him to be, because for a long time he was just labelled as a very quick player and not much else. But he has added goals and assists to his game now, which is really good. So can he use all of that experience to great effect for Leeds United and help Leeds stay up, by bagging some goals and assists? Let's hope so. Moving on to another player that might not necessarily be seen as a particularly popular one, Patrick Bamford. He's also in the 100 club. 102 Premier League appearances for Patrick now. Now, if we could keep Patrick fit for the entire season, and if he could get some of that form back where he ended up scoring 17 goals in the Premier League in one season for Leeds, I'm not necessarily saying that at the age of 31 now that he starts every game, but I just wonder if Patrick has a bigger role to play this season than what some people might be reckoning. He has worked his socks off in the summer holiday and has absolutely beefed up now. He is a Brutus beefcake. It's ridiculous. Um, and the thing is that one of Patrick's qualities is that he has always been very good at holding the ball up and bringing others into play. And he will, like, now that he's bulked up, he'll be a bugger for opposition defences. Um, if he can just improve on his clinicism, which I know is a made up word, but I like it. If Patrick could be more clinical, then I don't see why he can't bag a few goals for Leeds this season. It's a case of whether he's given the chance ahead of other players. You know, Nemetcha's come in, but again, Nemetcha's not all that prolific up to now. Joel Pirro, he's only proven at Championship level. Never proven in the Premier League. And young Matteo Joseph, who we'll come on to later on, still has a lot of developing to do. And the chances are the club will sign a new striker. So we shall have to see on that one. Moving on to Pascal Strout. I like Pascal. I think he's a good player, good defender. Has had experience at both centre back and left back. I mean, he's not a left back by any stretch of the imagination, but he has played some games there. Club vice captain, and a threat from aerial situations. I mean, the number of times in matches where the commentators are saying, and there's a header from Pascal Strout, and it's usually from the opposition goalkeeper lumping it forward, and Pascal's on it every time. You don't beat him. He's a unit. But a very decent player for me. And he's already bagged 85 senior. You know, he's got 85 appearances in the Premier League, all for Leeds, and would have been more if he hadn't picked up a couple of injuries. But a very solid return for a player who's, you know, he's been at Leeds a little while now. Yeah, he's done well. Moving on to a player that knows the club inside out, Sam Byram. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think any of his Premier League appearances were actually for Leeds. But he has bagged himself 59 games in the Premier League. He's just signed a new contract, and you can't turn your nose up at that kind of experience. 31 now, but has kept himself relatively fit over the last 2 seasons, and it was always his fitness that was going to be questionable. But he's proved everyone wrong in terms of the ones that thought he were done. Credit to him. He's earned that contract extension for me, but that experience could go a long way. It really could. Someone that might feel that he could challenge Meslier for the number 1 jersey this coming season is Carl Darlow, who again hasn't. I don't believe that any of his Premier League appearances were at Leeds, but he did bag himself 52 games for Newcastle. Well, certainly most of his Premier League games will have been with Newcastle. Yeah, so he's got 52 games under his belt, so if it ain't going to be Meslier, maybe it's Darlow. We're in a good position that 2 of our goalkeepers have both played a good chunk of games in the Premier League, so we shall see on that one. A little bit of a drop then. I mean, you got that initial drop from Pascal down to Sam. But then the next drop goes down to Brendan Aronson, who obviously clocked up 36 appearances in his 1 season in the Premier League with Leeds. Since then, he's toughened up a little bit. He's gone through a more grueling season in the Championship, and albeit I think we probably do need a better number 10. Aronson rates himself as a number 8 apparently. I think he would need to toughen up even further to be an 8, but again, 36 games for a player who's, what is he, 24? He's got time to improve still, so it's good experience. Now this next one surprised me. Joe Gallagher has actually got 35 appearances in the Premier League. I didn't realise he had that many. Now, I honestly don't think that Gallagher will be at the club any longer after this summer. I think he will go. Don't know who to, but I would say a Championship team. But for a player as young as Gallagher, and he's already got 35 appearances in the top flight, could there be some kind of place for Gallagher in the squad? It's questionable. He's not prolific. He's always a player that's looked like he's got a lot of promise, but he's never really hit the heights so far. And with him being about 22 now, he's the kind of player that's going to want to play regular first team games. So then the question is, do you play him as a 10, a 9, play him out wide? Where do you play Joe Gallagher? But he wouldn't be coming into it unfamiliar with the division, because he has bagged himself 35 appearances. I don't know. I don't know how he's got that many. A lot of them are probably sub appearances and some of them very short, but he's got them. Moving on to Jayden Bogle, who obviously doesn't have any Premier League appearances for Leeds United, but did bag himself 34 appearances while at Sheffield United. Unfortunately for him, was a very painful season, and obviously didn't necessarily crown himself in glory with that one. However, he's had a very good season with Leeds in the Championship, and he'll be hoping that despite the influx of new defenders that we have signed, he'll be hoping to keep his place at right back. And maybe going through a very difficult season the way that he did, maybe that's a good thing in a sense, because he's got experience of a relegation battle and he can pass those experiences on to those who have not been through it. Moving on to the captain, Ethan Ampadu. Again, another player that's not got any Premier League experience with Leeds, but has played 26 times in the Premier League before. Ampadu's one of those players who is already club captain, so he's going to be in and around that squad. You don't know if he's going to play every single game, but Farker, does see Ampadu as the club's most important player. So you would imagine that Ethan's going to get a lot of game time this season. So with him already having 26 games under his belt, at least he's not going to be completely unfamiliar. Now another one that had quite a few more than I thought, and that's Sam Greenwood. Similar to Joe Gallagher, I think Greenwood's time might be up at Leeds. But if he was to be kept on, he's got one hell of a set piece on him, and he has already made 25 appearances in the top division. So again, a player who, like Gallagher, he's only about 22-year-old at the minute. Lots of time to get better. Again, the same thing could be said about Sam as what could be said about Joe. Do you play him as a 9, a 10, out wide, even an 8? Maybe that's something that needs to be considered. But again, he's got a chunk of games. as has Wilfred Gnonto, who, if memory serves me right, got his Premier League experience under Jesse Marsh for the majority. The manager that said, no, we're not going to use him. And then he used him. So that was a weird one. But Will Gnonto's got himself 24 games in the Premier League, so again, quite a fair chunk. So he knows what it's about. And again, I think Will Gnonto's still only like 21, so again, it'll be really good experience for him to already have that going into this new season, without a shadow of a doubt. A player who's maybe a little low on the list, Joe Rodon. Didn't actually play for Swansea in the Premier League. He was a bit too young, but he was on their books. And then obviously he got his move to Tottenham Hotspur, and that's where he got himself 15 appearances in the Premier League. So this won't have done him any harm, and at least a player of Joe's seniority within the squad, at least he's going into this season with a little bit of game time from the top division. And then finally, again quite a bit of a drop off, Matteo Joseph, a player who has got so much promise, looks like he's got the potential to be a very decent striker. The question is, will he be given the chance? Because he was given the chance at the start of the Championship season, and he only got himself about 3 goals in his first 15 games, and then got dropped for Joel Pirro, who then obviously had a very solid season and ended up, I think, did he finish with 19 goals or something? It was quite good. So with Matteo, as I say, he's only got 3 appearances in the Premier League, and for me, probably needs a loan. Probably needs a loan spell to La Liga, or maybe a Championship club that's going to play him regular every week. But if he was to come into the fray, at least he's had a very little taste of it. So it's not going to be completely alien to him, but it will be still quite new. So, to answer the original question, does the current Leeds United squad have any Premier League experience? Well, technically, yes, they do, and a reasonable chunk of it. I can't imagine that the squads of Sunderland and Burnley have got as many players with as many Premier League appearances as what Leeds have got. I honestly don't think they have. So this really isn't a bad thing whatsoever. You can almost put a playable first 11 with that list. It's maybe just lacking another proper midfielder. But if Aronson is to be believed with what he's reckoning, then you could drop Aronson into the 8, play with him as an 8 and Ampadu as an all-out 6, and then obviously you've got Harrison and James on the wings, and then Gallat would probably have to come in and play the 10, or possibly Greenwood. You could, or even Gnonto for that matter. Yeah, you could put Gnonto in there. Between Gnonto, James, and Harrison, you could rotate on the wings and rotate between themselves for the number 10 position throughout the match. So then you've got to ask the question: if you were to take an 11 out of this group, how would that 11 fare against the other Premier League teams? Would that lineup get slaughtered? Or would they put a fight up? And could they possibly get something, against the teams that are going to be in and around us? Forget Burnley and Sunderland, but your Wolves, your West Hams, if Man United and Tottenham Hotspur have bad seasons, could they perform against those two? Everton, Crystal Palace maybe. You know, all these teams. Brentford, who I think are going to be screwed this season. You know, that's another one. Could this lineup? Could the 11 players out of this lineup go on that pitch and get a result? Or would it be guaranteed loss? I mean, the thing is, you've got a toss-up between Meslier and Darlow in goal. You'd have Bogle at right back, Byram at left back. With Bogle, you know he's going to bomb forward. With Byram, he's more defensively stout. So that's what you get there. So then you need, I mean, you'd obviously have James and either Harrison or Nunto. Well, basically those three would be three behind the striker. Potentially. But then, as I say, you've got Gellert. You've got Greenwood. And you need someone that's going to play in that 8. So if it's not going to be Aronson, maybe Greenwood slots in the 8. But Greenwood does pick up some bookings. So you wouldn't want him in a defensive 8. You know, it'd have to be a progressive 8. So I mean, you know, with this lineup, you know, with this list of players, I'd take Joseph out of the mix. And realistically, I think Gellert and Greenwood are out of the picture. So that then leaves Harrison, Meslier, James, Bamford, Strauch, Byram, Darlow, Aronson, Bogle, Ampadu, Nonto and Rodon. 12 players. So 11, you know, the first 11 and one of the goalkeepers on the bench. And so it begs the question, could, you know, how would that lineup play? How could that lineup do against your Brentfords, your Wolves, your West Hams, your Evertons, your Crystal Palaces? How could that 11 realistically do? I don't think they get slaughtered. Like, I don't see them getting thrashed. Not by those lower teams. I think against the best quality in the league, yeah, they could get thumped. But I don't think we're in as bad a shape as what it was maybe made out to be. Because bearing in mind, look at the players that don't have any Premier League experience right now. Autanaka, Laji Ramazani, Joel Pirro. Those three in particular. And with those three, they're all decent players. Maybe those three could hack it in a Premier League match. Nemecha, Biol, Bornau and Gudmundsson, you know, those four are likely to fancy the chances, even though none of them have any real Premier League experience, albeit Nemecha was on the books but never played. Not at Leeds, by the way. So on top of all that, we're gonna sign some more players. I don't think we stick at those 4. If we did, we're in big trouble. So I think we still get another 4, 5, 6, 7 players before the season starts. I really do. I fully believe that. But rest assured, folks, I don't think we're in as bad a shape as maybe we thought. Because when you look at this list, it's depending on what the club does with Harrison. Do they get a PSR profit off him? Or do they keep him and see him as a possible replacement for Solomon? And then, as far as the rest of the list is concerned, Gellert, Greenwood, Joseph. Where do those three stand? And maybe even Melier or Darlow, dependent on who's going to play, who's not going to play. That could all be a factor too. So it's going to be interesting, folks. It's going to be really, really interesting. As I say, with this abundance of experience that we've got on screen right now, I don't think we can afford to lose too many of them. I think these guys have, they've played at this level before. Can you really afford to let that experience go? I'm not so sure. But I think there's some players that have got a part to play this season. But I do still think that Leeds, at the end of the summer, will have signed a brand new first 11. Not necessarily an 11 that's going to play every week, but a potential brand new first 11. Playable 11, shall we say. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that, folks. But maybe leave this video with a little bit of positivity that maybe we're in a slightly better position than we actually thought. Let's not be concerned about who Burnley are signing, who Sunderland are signing, who all the other teams are signing. Sunderland have already overpaid for, Diarra and Siddiqui, and are looking likely to overpay for the other players that they're getting as well. Burnley have just spent a shed load on wages for Walker, and have had to splash their cash on a lot of players that had clauses in their contract that if they got promoted they had to then buy those players. So Burnley are actually in a slightly lesser financial stability than what they probably thought they were going to be, because a lot of their transfer kitty has been blown on the players that they've been forced to buy. So with all of this being said, I think Leeds are in the best position of the three. I think this list alone proves that our squad is better than theirs, because we've got all this Premier League experience, and I don't think that, like Sunderland definitely don't. Burnley, not sure, because obviously they had a more recent season in the Premier League, so they probably, maybe Burnley do have players that have played more games in the Premier League than Leeds. But even so, I wouldn't be that concerned. We just need to focus on ourselves, get some extra quality coming through, keep a lot of these guys, because these guys will be able to guide the players who haven't had that Premier League experience and help them through the season. As I say, there's no guarantee that anyone on this list is going to be a starter in that first 11. A lot of these could be dropped to the subs bench, but even if our subs bench was made up of all these players here, that's not a bad bench. That's not a bad bench, I don't think. But we would need much better quality coming through. We've got to hope that the likes of Beal and Bornau and Gudmundsson and Nemecha, we've got to hope that those four really are bringing some quality to the squad. Only time will tell with that, of course. But in the meantime, I think the squad's in better shape with these current guys than maybe what we first realised. So do please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. As I say, I'm not saying that this 11 or group of players that are on screen would go the whole season unbeaten. Not a chance. But could they actually put up a fight and maybe grab a few points? I think that maybe they could. So do please give the video a thumbs up like. Do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And do leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think that this group of players could potentially be good enough to get some points against some of the lower teams? Or do you think that these players are just not quite good enough and will have to just be on the subs bench? What would you do with a lot of these players? I know there's some fans out there that would gladly get rid of about 4 or 5 of them. But I'm kind of in the group that's kind of thinking maybe these guys have got more to offer than maybe we realise. Well, that's what we'll find out in the near future. Hopefully these guys get a chance to play in these high profile friendlies, and if they perform well, you know, gotta hold them in good stead, hasn't it? Massively. So I'll leave it there, folks. But hope you've enjoyed that one, and as I say, for any Leeds fans that are watching, let me know what kind of Leeds United content you'd like me to come out with. I quite like doing these videos for Leeds. I could talk about Leeds United all day. No issues for me. But yeah, I just wonder if maybe the squad's in better shape than what we thought. So I'll leave it at that. As I say, feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below, and do please give the video a like, and do please subscribe to the channel. More content coming your way, and I'm also doing little videos on the new players that are coming through. When I've done one for each of the 4 players that have come through so far this summer. Do please check those out, and let me know your thoughts on those players. Let me know if you feel these players are good enough. If you like what you're kind of seeing coming through the door at the minute, and let's hope that the new boys can adapt really quickly and that they play really well. That's what we're hoping for. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, folks. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.